I should have seen the warning signs, the little comments, the forced smiles. The way Ryan's parents always made me feel like I was temporary, like I was just a passing phase in their son's life. But love makes you blind, and I wanted to believe they had finally accepted me. I met Ryan 5 years ago, and despite coming from very different backgrounds, we fell fast and hard. His family was wealthy, old money type, with a last name that carried weight in our city. I, on the other hand, grew up in a small apartment with a single mom who worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Ryan always said he didn't care about status or money, and when he proposed, I believed him. His parents, however, were a different story. At our engagement dinner, his mother, Evelyn, took me aside and said with a polite but icy smile, "I hope you understand the importance of keeping our family's legacy intact." I had no idea what she meant at the time. After we got married, things were fine, at least on the surface. His parents weren't overly warm, but they weren't outright hostile either. They never fully included me in family discussions, and I often felt like an accessory to Ryan rather than an equal partner. But I let it go because Ryan was on my side, and I thought love was enough. Then I got pregnant. That's when everything changed. Suddenly, his parents were everywhere, offering financial help, constantly checking in, and showering me with gifts. They paid for my doctor's visits, planned an extravagant baby shower, and even gifted us a luxury baby moon vacation. I was so touched. I thought, maybe they finally see me as part of the family. Then, a few weeks before my due date, Ryan's father, Charles, casually mentioned something over dinner. "You know, it's smart to get all the legal stuff sorted before the baby comes. Just in case, of course." I looked at Ryan, confused. He nodded reassuringly. "Yeah, babe. Just a formality. It's nothing crazy, just a postnup to protect both of us if anything ever happens." I hesitated. We never had a prenup. Ryan always said he didn't care about money, so why now? "It's just standard," his father insisted, pulling out a thick stack of papers. "It doesn't change anything, it just makes things clear. You'd want that, wouldn't you?" They were all looking at me. Ryan, his father, his mother, smiling as if she already knew what I'd say. I was 8 months pregnant, tired, swollen, and completely trusting my husband. I skimmed the pages, too exhausted to fully comprehend all the legal jargon. And then I signed. That moment still haunts me, because I didn't realize I had just signed away my entire future. The nightmare didn't start right away. For the first year after my son, Theo, was born, life was normal. Or at least, I thought it was. Ryan was a loving husband, an involved father, and despite his demanding job, he always made time for us. His parents were still themselves, a little cold, a little condescending, but they adored Theo, so I bit my tongue. Then, out of nowhere, Ryan changed. It started with the late nights. He suddenly had work emergencies that kept him out until 2 or 3 a.m. He stopped being affectionate, barely spoke to me unless it was about Theo, and started sleeping in the guest room, claiming he was too exhausted for intimacy. I tried everything, romantic dinners, deep conversations, even couples therapy, but nothing worked. Ryan was slipping away, and I didn't understand why. Then I found the receipt. A hotel in the city. A luxury suite booked under Ryan's name, for 2 guests. My hands shook as I scrolled through the hotel's website. That suite cost more per night than my entire monthly paycheck before I became a stay-at-home mom. I confronted him the second he walked through the door. "Who were you with?" I demanded, holding up the receipt. Ryan didn't even flinch. "It's not what you think." But the way he didn't deny it told me everything I needed to know. I felt like I was drowning. "You're cheating on me?" My voice cracked. He sighed, like I was annoying him. "It's complicated." No, it wasn't complicated. It was simple. He was a liar, a cheater, and I had just wasted years of my life on a man who didn't even have the decency to pretend to be sorry. I saw red. "I'm taking Theo and leaving." That's when Ryan smirked. "You can leave, but Theo stays with me." My blood ran cold. "Excuse me?" He walked over to the kitchen, casually pouring himself a drink like we weren't in the middle of a war. "You signed a postnup, remember? It says in the event of a separation, my family retains primary custody. You agreed to it." I felt my knees buckle. That's not possible. But it was. I scrambled to find the paperwork I had stupidly signed while I was pregnant. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages, my vision blurring. And then I saw it. A custody clause, buried deep in the legal jargon, written in a way I never would have noticed unless I had a law degree. I had signed away my rights to my own child. My stomach twisted. "You tricked me," I whispered. Ryan took a sip of his drink, completely unfazed. "No, you just didn't read the fine print." I wanted to throw up. His family had planned this from the start. They never wanted me in their bloodline. They just wanted my son. I had two choices: walk away with nothing, or fight a legal battle against a family with endless money and connections. But there's one thing they don't know about me. I may have been naive before, but I am not weak. If they want to fight, they're going to get one. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ryan's smug face, heard his condescending voice. "You just didn't read the fine print." I was trapped. Legally, financially, completely. If I left, I'd have nothing, no money, no home, and worst of all, no guaranteed custody of Theo. But Ryan and his family had underestimated one thing about me. I don't go down without a fight. The next morning, I called the best divorce attorney in the city. He listened as I poured out my story, my voice shaking with anger and desperation. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. "This is one of the most manipulative postnups I've ever seen," he finally said. "But don't panic. There's always a way out." His words lit a spark inside me. "How?" "First, we need leverage. Something that proves he's been deceitful or acting in bad faith. A judge won't like that." I knew exactly where to start. Ryan had become reckless. He wasn't even trying to hide his affair anymore. His phone was always buzzing, and he was constantly sneaking off for work calls that left him smiling like a teenager. That night, while he was showering, I took his phone. I knew the password. He was stupid enough to use our anniversary. It took less than a minute to find the messages. "Ryan, I wish I could wake up next to you instead. Unknown number, soon, baby. She won't be a problem much longer." I felt my blood turn to ice. It wasn't just cheating. It was premeditated. They were planning to get rid of me. I quickly screenshotted everything and sent it to myself. Then I placed his phone exactly where I found it. Now, I had proof, but I needed more. The next morning, I casually mentioned that I wanted to discuss the postnup. Ryan smirked. "Why? Finally realizing you made a mistake?" I bit my tongue and forced a smile. "I just want to make sure I understand it completely. Can we go over it tonight?" He agreed, eager to gloat. That evening, I set my phone to record and slid it under the table before we started talking. Ryan went on and on, bragging about how his family's lawyers had designed the postnup to be airtight, how he knew I'd just sign whatever because I was pregnant and trusting. "You were stupid, babe," he laughed. "You basically handed Theo over to me. My parents knew exactly how to play you." My stomach turned, but I kept my face neutral. I had everything I needed. The next morning, I met with my lawyer again and handed over the texts and the recording. He listened, his expression growing darker by the second. "This changes everything." Ryan and his family had committed fraud. They had deliberately deceived me to sign an unfair agreement. And courts hate when one party acts in bad faith, especially when a child is involved. With this evidence, we can argue that the postnup should be thrown out entirely. A slow smile spread across my face. Burn them to the ground. Ryan had no idea what was coming. 2 weeks later, he was served with divorce papers. His smugness vanished the second he saw the accusations. Fraud, infidelity, coercion, and an attempt to manipulate custody. Then came the real blow. My lawyer had filed an emergency petition to invalidate the postnup and freeze our joint assets. Until the court ruled, he couldn't touch a dime. Ryan stormed into the house that night, furious. "You think you can do this to me?" I folded my arms. "You did this to yourself." His face twisted with rage, but he wasn't in control anymore. I was. The day after Ryan was served, he left. Not for good. Not yet. But he packed a bag, slammed the door, and disappeared for 3 days. His parents must have told him to lay low, to let the lawyers handle it. I imagined them all sitting in their mansion, drinking expensive wine, laughing at the idea that I thought I could win. But they didn't know what I had planned next. Because I wasn't just going to win. I was going to ruin them. My lawyer was ruthless. He didn't just go after Ryan. He went after his entire family. First, we dug into the real reason they wanted Theo so badly. It wasn't just about family legacy. It was money. Ryan's parents had set up a multi-million-dollar trust fund for their future grandchild. And here's the catch. It could only be controlled by the legal guardian. If I was out of the picture, the money stayed in their hands. That's why they tricked me into signing the postnup. They wanted custody not because they loved Theo, but because he was their financial security. Disgusting. And it got worse. My lawyer found out that Ryan's family had done this before. Ryan's older brother had been married before me, to a woman named Lauren. She had mysteriously vanished after their divorce, and when I tracked her down, I found out why. They destroyed me. She told me over the phone, her voice shaking. They took my daughter. They convinced the court I was unstable and used their money to bury me in legal fees. I had no choice but to walk away. I felt sick. This wasn't just about me. This was a pattern. A family legacy of stealing children to keep their wealth and their bloodline. I recorded every word of Lauren's story. Then I sent it to my lawyer. We're taking this public, I told him. And we did. I didn't just fight Ryan in court. I fought him in the court of public opinion. My lawyer leaked everything. The fraudulent postnup, the hidden trust fund, the story of Lauren's stolen child. We handed over recordings to a well-known investigative journalist, and within days, it exploded all over social media. The headline? Wealthy family caught manipulating women into giving up custody of their children for money. It was everywhere. Ryan's parents tried to buy the media silence, but it was too late. News outlets picked it up. People dug into their past, uncovering even more shady dealings. Suddenly, their once pristine reputation was in tatters. And Ryan? He was fired from his job. His company didn't want to be associated with a walking PR disaster. His father resigned from his board position at a major corporation. His mother's social circle shunned her. They had spent years building their empire. And in less than a month, I burned it to the ground. Ryan tried to fight back. He hired the best lawyers money could buy, but it wasn't enough. The judge shredded the postnup, calling it fraudulent and coercive. Not only did I get full custody of Theo, but Ryan was ordered to pay alimony and child support, a huge amount, considering his family's wealth. And the cherry on top? The court barred his parents from having any unsupervised visits with Theo. They lost everything. Ryan had nothing left. His reputation? Destroyed. His job? Gone. His family name? Dragged through the mud. One night, he showed up at my door. He looked pathetic, disheveled, desperate. Nothing like the powerful man who once smirked at me across the dinner table. Please, he begged. I lost everything. I just want to see Theo. I stared at him for a long moment. Then I said the words I had waited months to say. You just didn't read the fine print. And then I shut the door in his face. Ryan wasn't done trying to crawl his way back into my life. After the court ruling, he went into full damage control mode. His family might have lost their power, but Ryan still had one last weapon: manipulation. At first, he tried the remorseful X act. He showed up unannounced at my house, standing in the rain like some tragic movie character. I messed up, he whispered, his voice shaking. I should have fought for you instead of against you. Please, let's just talk. I almost laughed. Where was this remorse when he was smirking over how his family outplayed me? Where was this pain when he was sleeping with his mistress while I was at home taking care of our son? I told him to leave. And that's when he dropped the act. The blackmail attempt. A week later, I got an email. The subject line? For Theo's sake, don't make me do this. Inside were photos. Pictures of me, out with friends, drinking at a bachelorette party years ago. A screenshot of me dancing with a male coworker at an office Christmas party. Innocent things, but twisted just enough to look incriminating. Then the message. I can still fight for custody. Courts don't like unstable mothers. Let's negotiate before things get ugly. I felt my heart rate spike. Not from fear, but from rage. Ryan was desperate. And desperate men make mistakes. I forwarded the email to my lawyer. His response was immediate. Do not reply. Let's bait him into going further. And it worked. The next night, Ryan showed up at my house again, smug, thinking he had me cornered. But what he didn't know, I was recording. Just give me joint custody, he said, crossing his arms. And I'll forget all about those photos. No judge wants to see a mother getting drunk and grinding on other men. I stared at him, my expression blank. You really think this will work? His smirk widened. I know it will. I leaned in, meeting his gaze. You're right. His eyebrows shot up in surprise. Wait, what? I pulled out my phone and hit play. His own voice filled the air. No judge wants to see a mother getting drunk and grinding on other men. His smirk vanished. You. Just blackmailing my way into custody. His recorded voice continued, echoing off the walls. Ryan's face turned ghost white. You recorded me? I smiled. You just didn't read the fine print. His entire body tensed. He knew what this meant. If this recording got to the court, not only would his blackmail attempt destroy any chance at custody, but it could even lead to criminal charges. He had lost. Again. Ryan turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. And just like that, the final nail was in his coffin. The mistress meltdown. But there was one more loose end to tie up. Ryan's mistress. I hadn't forgotten about her. And apparently, neither had she. Because the very next day, she called me. I just want to talk, she pleaded. I was intrigued. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop, expecting some ridiculous confrontation. But when I walked in, she looked terrified. He lied to me, she blurted out before I even sat down. I raised an eyebrow. About what? About everything. She handed me her phone, scrolling through messages. Ryan had been telling her the same things he once told me. I'm only with her for now. I'll leave once I get custody. Just wait a little longer, babe. You'll be the real mother to my son soon. And the worst one? Once I get full custody, I'll cut her off completely. She won't see Theo again. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just about his family's money anymore. Ryan was willing to erase me from my own son's life. He's dangerous, she whispered, looking down. And I don't think he's done trying to screw you over. I believed her. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. The moment I left the coffee shop, I knew I had to end this, for good. Ryan wasn't just some bitter ex. He was dangerous. He was actively trying to erase me from my own son's life. He had manipulated me, blackmailed me, and used his family's wealth to control me. But now, I had all the power. First, I sent every message the mistress had shown me to my lawyer. Then, I met with my private investigator. Yes, I had hired one. Because I knew Ryan. He was predictable. He thought he was invincible. And men like that? They always slip up. Within 1 week, my PI had everything I needed. Ryan had been embezzling money from his own family's company. He had funneled hundreds of thousands into private accounts, using company funds to fund his luxury lifestyle, hotels, and his mistress. The best part? His father, the same man who had tried to manipulate me, had no idea. I took a deep breath and dialed Charles, my ex-father-in-law. Meet me at your office. Now. I walked into the boardroom alone, but I wasn't afraid. Across from me sat Charles, his lawyers, and Ryan, who looked smug as ever. You have no case, Ryan scoffed. Just sign the custody agreement and move on. I smiled. I'm not here for custody. I slid a thick folder across the table. I'm here to show your father what you've been up to. Charles frowned, flipping through the documents. I watched as his face twisted from confusion to horror. Ryan, what is this? He muttered. Ryan paled. Dad, it's nothing. She's lying. You stole from the company? Charles roared, slamming the documents down. His lawyers started panicking, whispering to each other. But I wasn't done. I pulled out another folder. And here's proof that Ryan tried to blackmail me for custody. I slid my phone across the table and played the recording of Ryan admitting to his scheme. The room fell silent. Ryan's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. He was done. Charles slowly turned to his son. His voice was deadly calm. Get out. Ryan stumbled back, his eyes darting between us. Dad, please. She's turning you against me? I said get out. And just like that, Ryan was thrown out of his own family's empire. His father pressed charges. His accounts were frozen. His mistress left him. And me? I walked away with full custody, half his assets, and complete legal protection. Ryan didn't just lose. He was erased. 1 year later, I never heard from Ryan again. After his father cut him off, he fled the country to start fresh, aka run from his financial crimes. Last I heard, he was living in a tiny apartment somewhere in Thailand, broke and alone. His mother tried one last time to get in touch, begging to see Theo. I blocked her. Theo and I moved into a new house, free from their toxic legacy. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. One night, as I was tucking Theo into bed, he looked up at me with those big, innocent eyes. "Mommy, are we safe now?" I smiled, brushing his hair back. "Yes, baby. We're finally safe." And we were. Because this time, I had read the fine print. 1 year after I buried Ryan and his family's legacy, my life was finally mine again. Theo was thriving, happy, healthy, and completely untouched by the chaos his father had caused. We had moved to a quiet little town by the coast, where no one whispered about my ex-husband's downfall or his family's disgrace. For the first time in years, I could just be me. But life had one last surprise for me. One afternoon, I was sitting in a cafe, sipping my coffee, when someone slid into the seat across from me. "You look different." I looked up and nearly spilled my drink. It was Lauren, Ryan's older brother's ex-wife, the woman they had tried to ruin before me. She looked stronger now, calm, collected. Not the terrified voice I had heard over the phone all those months ago. "So do you," I said with a small smile. She exhaled. "I wanted to find you, to thank you. What you did, you didn't just save yourself. You exposed them. And because of that?" She slid a photo across the table. A little girl, around 6, with bright blue eyes. "I got my daughter back." I stared at the picture, my throat tightening. "You won custody?" Lauren nodded, her eyes glassy with tears. "Once the courts saw what they did to you, they reopened my case. The judge ruled in my favor." She swallowed hard. "They don't control her anymore. They never will again." I felt a lump rise in my throat. I had thought my battle was just for me and Theo, but in taking them down, I had saved someone else too. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "They messed with the wrong women." Lauren smirked. "Damn right they did." That night, I sat on my porch, watching Theo play in the yard. The sun was setting, the sky a wash of pink and gold. For the first time in forever, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't scared. I wasn't trapped. I was free. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready for something more. I had spent so long surviving that I had forgotten what it felt like to just live. As I sat there, my phone buzzed. A message from someone I had met recently, a single dad from Theo's new school. "Hey, I know this great little place by the beach. Want to grab dinner sometime?" I smiled. Maybe it was time to say yes. Because my story wasn't just about revenge. It was about starting over. And I wasn't just going to live. I was going to thrive.